Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere few dare to go after dark, to the soft whispering sands of Saqqara. You're not here as a tourist, not even as a historian. Tonight, you're a wanderer, guided only by moonlight and the strange outline of a structure that was never quite finished. The stones don't shout like the pyramids of Giza. No tourists, no polished signs, just an odd shape, half buried, half built, and more than a little suspicious. The air is dry, still, and cool against your skin. Somewhere far off, a desert fox yips, and is quickly swallowed by silence. Ahead of you lies a pile of massive limestone blocks, stacked not quite right. Some are pristine, others cracked like they gave up halfway. This pyramid looks more like a mistake than a monument, but that's what makes it so interesting. You probably won't survive this if you were one of the laborers back in 2648 BCE. You would have passed out by noon just carrying your water jug. But luckily, tonight, you're only here to listen and imagine safe sound, and maybe even sleepy. The wind nudges your shoulder like it's trying to remind you of something. You pause, one foot planted in warm sand, and study the outline ahead. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It doesn't have the sleek triangular silhouette you expect. Instead, it looks lopsided, almost shy, like it's hiding something. This pyramid was never completed. Most tourists don't even know it exists. Even some Egyptologists forget its name. But you're not most people. You circle to the southern side, where the angle of the slope suggests what might have been. If completed, it would have risen nearly 230 feet into the sky, taller than its older sibling, the step pyramid of Djoser nearby. And yet, it didn't get past the first few layers. It's like someone hit pause, or delete. No royal guards, no grand procession, no signs of a pharaoh's final resting place. Just half a monument, and a whole lot of mystery. You kneel beside one of the foundation blocks. It's rougher than expected, more like it was dragged there in haste. Bits of white gypsum dust still cling to the cracks, and just beneath your fingers, you find a chipped engraving, 3 vertical lines beside a curved loop. You squint, ancient Egyptian numerals, probably a year marker, or maybe a name. But the name is gone, smoothed over, erased. That's odd. Even in pyramids that collapsed or were robbed, names stayed behind. Pharaohs were obsessed with being remembered. Their names were everything. To be forgotten was worse than death. You look up at the structure again, and suddenly, you feel like you're not alone. Not in a creepy boo kind of way, just watched, observed, like the pyramid itself is holding its breath. Scholars still debate how this entire project got so far without anyone noticing the red flags. You'd think someone would have raised a hand during the planning meeting and said, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't keep building on unstable rock," but apparently not. Here's a strange fact. This pyramid sat buried under sand for centuries, literally. It wasn't rediscovered until the 1950s. Egyptian archaeologist Zakaria Ghanim stumbled across its entrance while surveying the desert. And what he found? Well, let's just say it wasn't what anyone expected. But that's a story for later. For now, you walk toward the open trench, the place where a descending corridor was dug out of the rock. Like a mouth opening beneath the sand, you hesitate, not out of fear, just a quiet instinct to listen. And what you hear is wind, but not normal wind. It whistles in a rhythm like someone breathing in a long-forgotten pattern. You shake it off, must be the acoustics of ancient stone. You descend, one step at a time. Torches used to line this pathway. You can almost smell the soot, feel the flicker of firelight dancing across these walls. Some of the limestone blocks still bear red-ink sketches, rough outlines of symbols that never got carved. Drafts, ideas, maybe even warnings, and there it is again, that breath of wind. But this time, it comes from below. Remember that vibe you had at the top, that watchful silence. Down here, it's louder. You keep going. The passage ends in a wall of stone. One you weren't expecting. No doorway, no sarcophagus, no treasure. Just smooth, cold rock. You press your palm to it, and the wall hums. You pull your hand away slowly, as if the stone might reach back. That hum wasn't your imagination. It wasn't loud, but it had weight. Like the faint vibration of a subway tunnel, long before the train arrives except you're underground, in a 4,600-year-old corridor, and there are definitely no trains in ancient Saqqara. You glance behind you. The moonlit desert feels impossibly far away now, like another life. Just you, this narrow passageway, and the unfinished ambitions of a forgotten pharaoh. Pharaoh Sekhemkhet. Not exactly a household name, but that's what makes him perfect for a mystery like this. He ruled during Egypt's third dynasty, just after the legendary Djoser, the guy with the first-step pyramid. Sekhemkhet was supposed to one-up him. Bigger, taller, grander. Except, he didn't even get halfway. His reign only lasted about 6 years, maybe less. You imagine him standing at the base of this pyramid, arms crossed, looking up at what was supposed to be his stairway to the stars. His builders swarm around him. The priests nod approvingly. The architects sketch in the dust. And then nothing. Just one day, no pharaoh. No funeral records, no tomb, no ceremony. He simply disappears from history. Historians still argue whether Sekhemkhet died unexpectedly, or if there was some kind of palace intrigue and early exit, helped along by a well-placed rival. One moment, construction is booming. The next, every chisel is dropped, every worker vanishes, and the desert begins swallowing the pyramid piece by piece. You run your fingers along the stone again, rough in some places, polished in others. That's the thing, they really were building this. This wasn't an abandoned plan. This wasn't a ceremonial start. This was a full-scale project that just stopped. Let's put it this way. If you were playing ancient Pharaoh Sims, this is what happens when your ruler gets deleted mid-save. Game over. You lean closer to the wall. The hum has faded now. Maybe it was a trick of the blood rushing in your ears. But something's still off. Sekhemkhet's name doesn't appear in the usual places. No stele, no royal scrolls. Even his cartouche, the royal name inside an oval, shows up sparingly. His reign is more of a footnote than a chapter. And yet, here's this pyramid, hidden in the sands for thousands of years, whispering that something did happen. Something worth building for. Something worth hiding. You step back out into the main corridor and let your eyes adjust. Ghanemi, the archaeologist who rediscovered this site in the 1950s, had the same eerie feeling. He found strange anomalies in the construction. Tunnels started but never finished. Storage rooms dug too deep, and a sealed sarcophagus, unopened. More on that later. You run your hand across a chiseled line of hieroglyphs, only partially carved. It trails off, like the scribe just stood up and walked away. You imagine the scene. A row of stone carvers, kneeling in the corridor. One turns to cough. Another pauses to sip from a water jar. Then, suddenly, silence. All of them gone, tools scattered, designs unfinished. Like the place was evacuated mid. Why a plague, political upheaval, a pharaoh's disappearance? Maybe all three. Scholars have long wondered whether this pyramid was cursed. Not in the Hollywood mummies and scarabs kind of way, but in that slow, creeping sense that something about the site was wrong. That maybe, just maybe, they weren't supposed to finish it. Sekhemkhet was trying to outshine Djoser. But what if he uncovered something beneath Saqqara that wasn't meant to be disturbed? What if the real mystery isn't why the pyramid wasn't finished, but why it was started at all? The desert has a way of erasing answers, while leaving behind just enough questions to drive you slightly mad. And in Sekhemkhet's case, the questions are more persistent than the stone itself. Take the location. For instance, it wasn't picked at random. The pyramid sits on a sacred plateau, a place believed to bridge the land of the living with the Duwata Egyptian underworld. Egyptian architecture wasn't guesswork. Every angle aligned with a star. Every shadow had a season. That's not symbolic. That's strategic. You kick at the sand. Tiny grains scatter like 1,000 forgotten names. This isn't just a construction site. It's a map, a clue, a sentence never finished. And the more you listen, the more it feels like the pyramid wants you to finish the thought. Back up top, you imagine the architects walking in measured strides, robes fluttering, scrolls rolled tight in one hand, eyes squinting at the sun. They weren't just builders, they were planners, astronomers, maybe even mystics. So why does this pyramid break the pattern? Its orientation is slightly off. Its layers aren't uniform. The foundation stones shift more than they should, even accounting for time. It's like the pyramid is rebelling against itself. Or hiding something inside. As you rise from the corridor and brush the sand off your knees, the night wraps around you again like a blanket. The stars above Saqqara blink lazily, as if they've seen this story play out before. Some say Sekhemkhet died suddenly, and the nation just moved on. Others say he was overthrown, and his successors erased him out of fear or jealousy. Still others believe he never died at all. But here's a thought to chew on while the breeze picks up. Maybe the pyramid wasn't abandoned because of Sekhemkhet's death. Maybe Sekhemkhet was abandoned because of the pyramid. And now, you're here, standing on ground he may have cursed by accident or design. Better hope you packed a lucky amulet. The stars above you spin ever so slowly, but the earth under your feet feels still, unnaturally so. As if even time is hesitant to disturb the unfinished dreams buried in this sand. You glance once more at the incomplete pyramid behind you, then make your way toward the southern edge of the complex. Where Zakaria Ghanimi's most baffling discovery waits beneath a thin sheet of wind-blown dust, the sealed alabaster sarcophagus. Ghanaian found it in 1954, perfectly intact. No visible cracks, no pry marks, no signs of disturbance. And unlike so many tombs in Egypt, this one hadn't been looted. At least, that's what it looked like. You tread carefully, as if your footfalls might wake something. Picture the moment, Ghanem and his team brushing away centuries of dirt with soft bristles and steady hands. Torchlight flickers over the gleaming white stone. This wasn't limestone or sandstone. This was alabaster, smooth, translucent, glowing with inner light. And sealed tight, not with mortar or wax. Just a perfect lid, fused to the base. Like it was never meant to be opened. But of course they opened it. How could they not? It took days, chipping, wedging, levering, sweating under desert heat. Cameras stood by. A hush fell over the site. Ghaname watched as the final wedge was inserted, and the lid groaned upward. And inside? Nothing, no mummy, no amulets, no funeral linens, not even dust. Just air. That's the part where you're supposed to gasp, or maybe just blink slowly in disbelief. An unlooted sarcophagus, sealed for millennia, left empty. It sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Even now, historians argue whether it was ever meant to hold a body. Some say Sekhemkhet died before it was used. Others call it a decoy. But Ghanimi believed something more chilling. He believed someone or something had removed the body after it was sealed. And not by opening the sarcophagus, but by never opening it. Yeah, chew on that. Scholars mocked him. But even skeptics couldn't explain the untouched state. not robbed in haste, more like the contents were never there, or had vanished. Here's a fringe tidbit. Ancient Egyptians believed the Katha's soul traveled in and out through nose and mouth. If rituals failed, the Ka might wander. And in Sekhemkhet's case, the body never stayed behind to anchor it. Which begs the question, where did the Ku go? Now you're in the same chamber Gonem stood in, staring at the same alabaster box. It still glows faintly under moonlight, as if remembering. You reach out to touch it. The stone is cold, deep sea cold, tomb cold. You feel faint carvings, grooves, spirals almost invisible. Not hieroglyphs, not made by tools, the kind made by nothing else. It's around now Ghanem's story takes a darker turn. After the discovery, pressure mounted. Critics, officials, skeptics. Some accused him of hoarding secrets or faking it all. In 1959, 5 years later, Ghanem walked into the Nile and never returned. Officially suicide, but whispers say otherwise. Some say he was cursed. Some say he found something and paid for it. This pyramid wasn't finished. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe the architects weren't reassigned. They were erased. The question isn't why the tomb was empty. It's why someone worked so hard to keep it sealed. And why it still whispers today. You step back and listen. That hum, it's back. Faint, like before. But now it's joined by another sound, deeper, rhythmic. Breathing, not yours. You hold still, heart knocking against your ribs. But then, silence, just the wind, right? You chuckle softly, but it's nervous. You turn to the wall behind the sarcophagus. It's rougher than the rest, patched like something was hidden. You brush away dust. A groove appears like a sealed doorway. Most call it a construction mistake. You're not so sure anymore. After all, who builds a sealed sarcophagus with no body? In a room with no way in, behind a pyramid never meant to stand. Unless it was all misdirection. Sekhemkhet didn't fail. He hid. And the real question isn't where his body is. It's whether he ever needed one to begin with. Your breath slows as you step away from the sarcophagus. The alabaster glows dim behind you like a sleeping eye, closed for now, but watching, always watching. You tread softly, back through the narrow hallway, past the niches where tools once hung. Past the half-carved stone blocks, the workers left in such a hurry, their chisels still wedged in place. You remember the dozens of abandoned copper tools scattered across the site. Almost like they dropped everything and ran. But now you find yourself pausing by the western corridor, the one that leads to the workers' chambers. If you're imagining rows of bunks and gentle humming before sleep, think again. These spaces are cramped, stifling, carved into the rock with brutal efficiency. No frescoes, no offerings, just stone and silence. You step inside one. It smells of dust and something faintly metallic, like old coins or dried blood. The floor is worn smooth, generations of feet, or just a short, frantic burst of traffic before nothing. In one corner, you spot a broken lamp. The kind fueled by animal fat, wick long gone. It lies tipped over next to a dark smear on the wall, too faded for analysis. But dark enough to make your spine straighten. Back in 1955, an Egyptian student named Abdul Halim recorded a strange detail. In one of these workers' rooms, he found shallow scratches on the back wall. Like someone had tried to claw their way through the stone. The marks were never officially logged. Ghanem's team dismissed them as animal activity. Because, of course, jackals famously carry chisels. The deeper you explore the workers' quarters, the more disturbing things become. One chamber has neatly stacked bedding, still arranged as if waiting for its owner to return. Another contains a half-written list in hieratic, script-likely inventory. You pause to read it. Tools, cloth, dates, water jars. But one entry near the end catches your eye. Offerings returned. Voice in the dark says stop. You blink. Did you read that right? You scan it again. It's smudged, hard to decipher. Maybe it doesn't say voice. Maybe it's just a name. Or maybe your brain's playing tricks, late night lighting, and all that. Still, historians still argue whether the sudden abandonment of Sekhemkhet's pyramid was political, practical, or something more sinister. Some suggest famine, others blame war. But there are no records of either during this period. Not a single record of a plague, revolt, or external threat. Just silence. And then the workers were gone. All of them. Here's your quirky tidbit. In 1972, a small stone figurine was found buried near the northwest edge of the site. It resembled a human with an ibis head, not uncommon in Egyptian art, usually linked to Thoth. But this one had its eyes gouged out. Not carved that way, removed. And embedded into the chest of the figure, tiny copper fragments, like pins. No museum would take it. Eventually it was misplaced. Or, as the Cairo Museum curator put it, I put it in a drawer and the drawer never opened again. You glance over your shoulder. You're still alone. Probably. Gona once said in an interview, there is something unfinished here that is more than stone. Something that was started before we arrived, and is not yet done. And that's the vibe, isn't it? It doesn't feel like ruins. It feels like something on pause. Like Sekhemkhet and his architects didn't stop there just waiting. You slide your hand along the cool stone of the corridor and make your way to the final room in the workers' section, the overseer's quarters. It's slightly larger, with what was likely a table in the center. Now collapsed, termite triddled. But what draws your eye is the mural on the eastern wall. Barely visible. Chipped, faded, obscured by time. But there's something about the lines. A figure, arms raised, surrounded by flame, or perhaps wings. Beneath it, smaller shapes, reaching, or recoiling. You've seen enough Egyptian art to know this isn't the usual fare. No angst, no gods you recognize. It's different. You lean in, trying to make sense of it. The colors are strange too. Red not made from ochre. Black that reflects light slightly, like mica. And there just at the edges, a symbol that makes your stomach turn. A spiral. The same kind you saw in the sarcophagus. Over and over, the same motif appears. Spirals inside eyes, spirals inside pyramids. Spirals forming the shape of a man. There's no record of these in the Egyptian canon. None. And that's when you remember what Ghanem said in one of his final notes. The spiral was not theirs, it came from elsewhere. What did he mean? Where else? You step back. The air here is stale. Not just dry, flat. Like nothing's moved in centuries. Or maybe like something's been holding its breath. You leave the workers' section with a little more haste than you intended. The corridor echoes behind you. Once, twice. You walk quickly now, retracing your steps out of the workers' corridor, and toward the main antechamber. The heavy quiet presses in like thick velvet draped over your shoulders. There's a subtle shift in temperature, colder, damper. And it's not just in the air, it's in your bones, in the soles of your feet. Like something old is humming beneath the surface. As you return to the central space, your eyes land once again on the spirals. They're carved with such obsessive precision. They don't seem to be mere decorations. They're arranged like constellations interconnected, orbiting some central void. You bend down, fingers grazing one of the larger spirals. And you realize it's worn smooth. Then quiet. Not chiseled, worn. As if countless hands touched it, or as if something once emerged from it. You pull your hand back quickly. Historians still argue whether the spiral was an early cosmological symbol, or an import from Nubian cultures. Others dismiss it altogether, claiming the markings were quarry graffiti. But deep down, you know there's an intent behind these designs. A kind of quiet intelligence. They weren't trying to decorate the space. They were trying to warn you. You move now to a lesser-known room off the eastern wall. Not part of the burial shaft, not listed on most maps. It's known in Ghanem's notes only as Chamber K. It was found sealed. Not with a block, but with a slab of limestone covered in beeswax and palm resin. That's not typical funerary practice. That's sealing in something. Ghanem opened it in March of 1955. The very next day, his assistant fell ill with something never identified. Fever, trembling, eventual paralysis of the vocal cords. The man recovered, but never spoke again. You press forward. Chamber K is small. Too small for a body. Too plain for a royal purpose. And yet the walls are covered in script. Not hieroglyphs, not hieratic, no known writing system. Ghanem called it the Babel lines. He joked it was as if someone had written gibberish in a sleepwalking state. The symbols are looping, fevered, rhythmic. Like a form of written sonar. Like language trying to imitate itself, or like something trying to communicate that had never spoken before. Here's a fringe tidbit. Linguist Farida Sabri analyzed rubbings of the Chamber K inscriptions in the 1960s. She claimed the patterns mimicked echolocation pulses. Her paper was quietly pulled. She disappeared 6 months later on an expedition in Sudan. You turn slowly in the chamber. The air is thicker here. Almost syrupy. On the far wall, a narrow slit so thin it could be missed entirely. A draft escapes it, warm and metallic. You move closer and peer in. And see nothing. Blackness, deep and perfect. You drop a small stone inside. There's no sound of it landing. Ghanem had a theory. This was a resonance chamber. A place where sound itself was altered. He recorded his own voice here once. The tape degraded instantly. Only one phrase survived. He is not done. You step back from the slit. The room doesn't feel empty anymore. You remember what one of the locals told you in Cairo. Over strong coffee and stronger warnings. The pyramid is unfinished because it wasn't meant to hold the dead. It was meant to hold the living until they could no longer leave. He laughed after saying it, but his eyes didn't. You leave Chamber K and pass back into the main hallway. Heading now toward the ascending passage. Most people forget this exists, so everyone's focused on the burial shaft. But this tunnel curves upward. Its path following the sun, or perhaps something older. The walls are covered in incomplete unnamed kings. Broken lineage. As if the stone couldn't hold their names, or refused to. You count 7 arches, each precisely placed. Architectural elegance, sure. But also, frequency. Harmonics. Maybe the Egyptians knew that stone could sing. Or scream. You hum, just to test the echo. It comes back warped. Deeper. Slower. Like something beneath the pyramid is mimicking you. Just slightly off-key. You walk faster. Historians believe this passage was part of a later renovation. Perhaps the pyramid was going to be extended upward. But that plan was never completed. The passage ends in a clean break. Not crumbled. Not collapsed. Just cut. As if the builders stopped in the middle of a breath. You remember reading about an inscription, found on a shard near this spot. Just 5 words in hieratic script. The sand does not forgive. Nobody knows what it means. It could be poetry, or prophecy, or a last warning from someone who saw too much. You reach the end of the ascending passage and look back. The light seems dimmer. Your flashlight flickers. You tap it. Once, twice. It steadies. For now. You feel something change in the air behind you. A soft pressure, like when an elevator descends too fast. Only you're not moving. And that's when you hear it. A breath, not yours. Short, exhaled. Right by your ear. You spin around. No one's there. But that spiral, the one you passed earlier. It's glowing. Faint. Just enough to see it shimmer in the dark. Like a living thing remembering its shape. You've had enough for one night. You head toward the exit, but something keeps you from running. Because whatever you've found here, it's not over. Sekhemkhet never finished his pyramid. But that doesn't mean it was abandoned. It means it's still waiting. And you're part of it now. Just one more voice in the dark, humming through stone. You stumble into the light. Not sunlight, not yet, but the gentle gray of early morning, seeping through the narrow crevice. The desert outside is still asleep, saved for the slow stirrings of wind brushing against the sand, like a whisper brushing your cheek. You exhale a long breath you didn't know you were holding. It escapes with the shaky rhythm of someone who's seen too much, too fast. The pyramid behind you stands as if nothing happened, still unfinished, still silent, still waiting. But your mind is loud now. The spiral still dances in your vision. The babble lines still itch at the back of your skull. You need answers, and not just from the crumbling walls, or the haunted passages of Sekhemkhet's tomb. You need to go back, way back, to the very idea of a pyramid, back to when Egypt wasn't Egypt yet. So you head to Cairo's dusty archives, not the fancy museum ones, the ones with more cats than tourists. An old archivist named Hafez greets you. Sweater in the heat, rosemary and goat cheese scent. No words, just a leather-bound folder. Inside, unpublished notes from a French archaeologist, Thérèse Duval, excavated near Saqqara, late 1800s. You've never heard of her. No one has. Which is strange, considering what she found. She claimed something beneath the plateau wasn't stone or earth. It was organic, shaped like vertebrae. She mapped shapes beneath Sekhemkhet's pyramid, and noticed they mirrored the inner ear of a human. The spiral again. And she described dream circles, low humming voice, saying, "I remember when you were me." The last page, a sketch, not hieroglyphs, not the pyramid. A face, wide eyes, no mouth, spirals carved into cheeks. Duval vanished in 1892, walked into the desert, left her boots, her compass, and her notes. Historians say madness, but her body was never found, nor were her boots. You sit with her papers. Pages feel warm. Spiral sketch pulls your eyes. The ink isn't faded. Then Hafez leans in. "There's something older under Sekhemkhet," he whispers. "But it doesn't sleep." His hands are shaking now. "It sings," he says. "When no one listens, it sings." You take the notes and leave. Next stop, the Serapeum. Not for Bulza, but for an untranslated inscription. Duval's sketch matches it perfectly. You walk the cool corridor. Massive stone boxes. 20 tons of polished granite. Empty supposedly. One box isn't sealed. You climb inside. Burnt cinnamon. Copper. Flashlight flickers again. On the lid another spiral. Smaller, playful. Beside it, the babble lines again. Something clicks. Maybe they weren't unfinished pyramids. What if they were built around something, like shells? Duval was right. You touch the lid. It vibrates just a little. Whatever's beneath Saqqara isn't just old. It's awake. And it's learning. You whisper into the air. "Who are you?" Silence, then a hum, not sound. A presence behind your ribs. You leave the Even sunlight feels suspicious, like it's watching, like it knows you know. And in the distance, just beyond Saqqara's ridgeline, the wind carries one word, half heard, half imagined: remember. You turn around, but the desert looks the same, for now. You leave Saqqara behind, but not really, not in your mind, not in your spine. There's something about spirals, they don't let go, they don't end, they just curve in, tighter and tighter, until you forget where they started, and why you ever entered them in the first place. Tonight, your journey drifts northeast, to the capital of ancient oddities and whispered dynastic whispers, Memphis. Or rather, what's left of it. A sleepy ruin hugging the Nile, broken columns, forgotten gods. You arrive just before dusk. The sky is bruised pink, the air smells of river water and something old. Older than history, older than Egypt. You're here to speak with an epigrapher named Dr. Kiran Malik, British-born, Indian roots. She can read 20 dialects of Demotic script without blinking. Her trailer office is half buried in sand. She welcomes you with cardamom tea and an exhausted smile. I've been expecting you, she says. She's holding a piece of sandstone, with the familiar spiral etched deep into its surface. I found this 2 months ago. It's not Egyptian, she says. You pause. Of course it is. It's in Egypt. It looks Egyptian until you look closer. The spiral curves in the wrong direction, counter to all known Egyptian motifs, as if trying to unwrite everything else. And inside the spiral, a single dot, a perfect void. It predates the step pyramid, she says. Possibly predates not. You blink, that would make it older than writing. Older than the first pharaoh. Older than Egypt being Egypt. She shrugs. There's a rumor of a hidden tomb beneath Djoser's tomb, sealed with a lock no one understands. You ask if it's a mechanical lock. No, she says. Linguistic. A sentence no one can pronounce properly. They say if you say it wrong, your voice never comes back. Okay, fun. Just bedtime story fun. You hope. She shows you the phrase. You try to read it. It twists in your mouth. Like whistling and yawning at once. Your tongue recoils. Your breath shortens. The world goes a bit wobbly. That happens, she says calmly. It's frenetic nonsense. But also, somehow not. Some say the tomb of the voiceless is just a myth, but it appears in Old Kingdom funerary texts. Enough to keep people curious, and mildly terrified. Then she drops the bomb. This spiral, she says, appears in Ethiopia. On a funerary mask, Neolithic era, 10,000 years old. Before pyramids, before writing, before agriculture. She shows you the image, not just similar, identical. And guess what? The mouth on the mask is missing too. Just like Duval's sketch. Just like the Serapeum face. You sip your tea. It tastes like anxiety now. You ask what she thinks it means. Kiran shrugs. I think there was something here before Egypt. Something we forgot. Or wanted to forget. But later, as you leave, you notice her tent walls. Covered in spirals. All inward except one. Drawn backward. In red. Beneath it, the phrase, I remember when you were me. Same phrase. Same hum. Same impossibility. You lie awake in your tent, listening to the river roll by. You don't sleep, not really. Not when the stars above blink, in rhythm with the spirals. Not when you realize, your dreams have started spinning too. By morning, you've given up on sleep entirely. Your dreams weren't dreams, they felt like memories. But not yours, someone else's, or something else's. Now bleary-eyed and tear-soaked, you catch a ride with an old driver named Omar. His truck has more duct tape than metal. You bounce along a desert road. Headed toward a site even fewer people talk about, Abida. Not for Osiris, not for Seti, not for the temples. But for the graffiti. Yeah, the weird stuff carved by workers. Doodles, scribbles, little nothings, except they're not nothings. Some of them repeat that same spiral, some mention the listener beneath. Sounds like a bad horror movie, right? You wish. You arrive at noon. Abydos shimmers like a mirage. Sandstone, shadows, tourists. But you don't stop there. You slip around the back toward a tunnel unearthed in the 1970s. Omar knows someone. You get in. It's musty, tight, carved by angry hands. Crude drawings line the walls. Tools, gods, obscene hieroglyphs. But then, 30 meters and something changes. The drawings get organized. More spirals, more Babel-line glyphs. Now surrounding a closed eye, and beneath it, a phrase in red ochre. Say not the name, lest the name say you. What does that even mean? You lean closer. The eye's curve is smooth from touch. Then the air shifts, the torch sputters. You freeze. From the tunnel's end a rhythmic clicking sound, like fingernails on stone. You call out no answer, then another click closer. You backpedal fast. You're not doing this alone. You burst into sunlight like a mole. Omar raises an eyebrow. Found what you needed. You nod, but say nothing. You don't mention the reversed spiral, now drawn on the back of your hand. You don't know when it got there, or how. That evening, at a cafe lit by buzzing yellow lights, you meet a man who calls himself Musa. He writes everything on napkins, drinks hibiscus tea, trusts only squeaky doors. He tells you about a Syrian manuscript, older than Islam, Christianity, and Hebrew. It speaks of a circle god, buried beneath a river that never stops flowing. You ask what it means. Musa smiles. It's a metaphor, but metaphors bleed. Then he shows you a map, not of Egypt, of the world. Drawn by Arab cartographers, old pre-longitude, pre-TikTok. At the crossroads of 4 vanished rivers, a spiral etched faintly. Same shape, same angle, same impossibility. Musa leans in. They weren't building monuments, he whispers. They were building cages. You shiver. Not from cold, from meaning. Because cages mean something's inside. Something that could get out. You ask him what's inside the unfinished pyramid of sea. He doesn't answer. Instead he says, some structures are never meant to be finished. Because finishing them completes the sentence. You stare. He sips tea. And once the sentence is complete, he says, it speaks back. You leave the cafe in silence. Your hands are shaking now. Not from fear, from vibration, because you swear. Somewhere behind you, you hear it again. That hum, low, curious, patient. Like something, waiting for its name. Back in Cairo, you can't shake the feeling that something followed you. Not a person, not even a presence, exactly. More like an idea with teeth. You try to sleep, but even under your paper-thin hotel blanket, the spiral keeps pulsing behind your eyelids. Every time you drift off, you dream of unfinished doorways, of passageways that turn in on themselves. Of a whisper calling from just beneath the sand, impossibly low, and impossibly old. So naturally, you do what any slightly unraveling historian would do. You go to the Cairo Museum. Because if you're going to lose your mind, you might as well do it in air conditioning. You're not looking at the usual suspects, the golden mask, the mummies, the royal sarcophagi. You're here for the weird shelves, the stuff not even tourists photograph. Fragments, shards, items misfiled or never labeled. You meet with a curator named Amal who's been working in the museum since it had rotary phones. She walks with a cane and glares like a falcon. But after you explain what you're chasing, minus the part where symbols are appearing on your skin, she sighs and unlocks a side room. Come, she says. You're looking for ghosts. No argument here. The room smells like history and mildew. Cabinets reach to the ceiling. She opens a drawer and shows you what looks like a brick. But it's not a brick. It's a seal, used to press wet clay with symbols. Not hieroglyphs. Not cuneiform. Something else. Something no one's decoded. And right in the center, the spiral. You run your thumb across the groove. It's shallow, but deliberate. Amal squints at you. We've had linguists from all over the world try to translate it. But the marks rearrange themselves when drawn digitally. I know it sounds crazy. But we stopped scanning it after 2 interns reported having the same dream. You already know what dream. You ask her what she thinks it is. She shrugs an echo of something older than history. Later, in the museum cafe, you nurse a mint tea and read through a stack of papers Amal quietly slipped you. Photocopies of excavation reports from the 1920s, never published. One name keeps popping up. Henry Vallon. A French archaeologist turned mystic, who became obsessed with primordial geometry and vanished in 1931 near Dachau. His last diary entry simply reads, "The sound returns when I draw the curve. The name is near." You trace the spiral on your napkin. The cafe lights flicker. Coincidence? Sure. Let's go with that. You contact a professor in Marseille, who wrote the only surviving dissertation on Vallon. She answers your video call in a cluttered office full of geometric models and very tired coffee mugs. When you ask her about Vallon's disappearance, she pauses. Then leans in. He believed Egypt wasn't the beginning, she says. It was the last layer, a pound. That beneath every temple is another, older temple. Not physically, but conceptually. He thought architecture was memory encoded in space. You ask if he left behind any maps. She nods. Then emails you a scan. You open it. And see something that chills you. Not because it's strange, but because it isn't. It's your spiral, not just the shape. But the spiral you've drawn, the one that appeared on your hand. The one you never showed anyone. Exactly the same proportions. Exactly the same break in the outer line. You ask where he found it. Not sure, she says. He called it le glyphe de l'écoute, the glyph of listening. You ask what it's supposed to listen to. She just says, that's the part he never figured out. Or maybe the part he didn't want to. You close your laptop. Outside, Cairo hums its usual song of horns and birds and street vendors. But you hear something else now. A harmony buried deep in the city's noise. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just ... waiting. The days blur as you dive deeper, drawn into a labyrinth of forgotten texts, half-deciphered scripts, and whispered legends. You realize you're chasing something that exists in the cracks between fact and myth, memory and oblivion. You return to Saqqara, this time guided by a local historian named Layla, who insists on showing you a site too old to be official. She leads you across sand dunes, past tombs untouched by tourists, to a hidden entrance almost swallowed by the earth itself. The air here is heavy, fragrant with dust and ancient resin. Inside, the walls pulse with faint carvings, so worn they're almost invisible. Layla points to a spiral, faint but unmistakable, etched behind centuries of grime. This, she whispers, is the real foundation. The heart beneath the heart. You crouch, tracing the lines. They feel warm, alive, as if they could hum beneath your fingertips. You ask Layla about the architects who vanished. She smiles sadly. They didn't disappear. They became part of the place, bound to the spiral, like echoes trapped in a cave. There's a fragile story she shares, one passed down by her family, whispered late at night. Of workers who heard voices singing in the stone. Of craftsmen who drew the spiral as a way to contain something inside, something they couldn't name. something that promised knowledge but took voices instead. The deeper you go, the more you realize the unfinished pyramid isn't just an architectural mystery. It's a monument to silence. A place built not to celebrate life or death, but to hold in the unspeakable. And maybe, just maybe, to keep it from reaching out. You pause before a wall covered in hieratic text. Some lines are clear, others seem erased by deliberate hands. Historians still debate whether these erasures were accidental or a form of ancient censorship. But to you, they read like redacted secrets. You turn to Layla and ask if there's anything more she can show you. She nods, leading you to a small chamber with a carved basin. Inside, a thick liquid shimmers like oil but with a faint glow. She explains it's a mixture of natron and bitumen, used in rituals to bind speech. You watch as she gently dips a finger into the liquid and traces the spiral on the wall. The liquid reflects the light, and the spiral seems to ripple breathing. You step back. The silence here is profound. You realize you're standing inside a story that's still being told. One without an ending. One where the architects never truly left. Because some mysteries don't end with stone. They echo in the spaces between. And they wait for you to listen. The night outside is calm, but inside your mind, the spiral spins endlessly. You can't help but wonder about the architects themselves. Who were they? Men, women, something else? There's a theory one whispered in academic circles but rarely spoken aloud. That the builders were part of a secret guild, a circle of craftsmen who passed down knowledge orally, and through hidden symbols like the spiral. They weren't just builders, they were guardians. Guardians of knowledge too dangerous for the masses. This guild, some say, vanished not because they died, but because they merged with their creation. They became part of the unfinished pyramid. Part of the silence. One odd fact you find is that some ancient texts describe the pyramid as a living tomb. Not of flesh, but of memory. A place that contains the voice of the world before speech. Historians still argue whether this is metaphor or something more literal. You find a fragment of a papyrus describing a ritual performed only once. On the night the pyramid was abandoned. The ritual called for the sealing of the voice through song and silence. It is said that the last architect sang into the spiral. And as his voice faded, so did the pyramid's construction. The builders vanished soon after, leaving tools scattered, plans half-finished, and an echo trapped in stone. Your curiosity pulls you toward the Great Pyramid next, the famous one built by Khufu. Some scholars suggest that Khufu's pyramid was designed to complete what Sekhemkhet began. To contain something, not just a body. You visit the complex, walking through the cramped passages, feeling the weight of history pressing in. Inside, the king's chamber holds a granite sarcophagus empty. But you notice something new. Spirals carved faintly on the walls, almost invisible unless you're looking for them. You wonder if this was a signature. A way for the architects to mark their unfinished work. Or perhaps a warning. You close your eyes and imagine the voices of the builders. Singing their final song into the stone. Hoping it would keep something at bay. The pyramid isn't just a tomb. It's a story. A warning. A mystery that hums softly in the dark. And as you leave, the desert wind carries a whisper. Listen. Your path next leads you away from Egypt's dusty ruins. And toward the lush, verdant highlands of Ethiopia. There, deep in the Rift Valley, lies an archaeological site whose spirals bear uncanny resemblance to those you've seen carved in stone and etched in shadows. This place, known as Tyre, is dotted with standing stones and burial markers. Dating back thousands of years. Long before pyramids even whispered their way into history. You arrive under a sky mottled with stars and the distant croaking of frogs. The air smells of wet earth and wild grasses. The locals speak of the stones as the guardians of memory. and you can't help but feel that these monoliths are part of the same mysterious language you've been chasing. The language of spirals and silence. One elder, a woman named Amina, tells you stories passed down from her ancestors. She speaks of a circle of listening, a sacred bond between humans, and something beneath the earth, a living memory trapped in rock and stone, a being neither dead nor alive. They believed the spirals were not just decoration, but a way to communicate with that ancient presence. Your fingers brush against one of the stones. The spiral is deeply carved, smooth as if worn by hands long gone but ever present. It's chilling to think that this symbol, this curve, has traveled through millennia and geography to appear again and again, linking pyramids in Egypt, burial masks in Ethiopia, and lost cities you've yet to explore. You ask Amina if the spirits of the builders still linger. She nods slowly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. They do not leave, she whispers. They wait beneath, humming their song. We hear it sometimes in the wind. You spend the night by the fire, the spiral ever in your mind's eye. The crackle of flames seems to echo an ancient rhythm, a lullaby from the past that hums softly through the ages. You wonder, is this spiral a message? A warning? Or a key? Historians still debate whether these symbols represent early forms of communication, or ritualistic markings meant to protect the dead. But to you, they feel like a thread connecting distant times and places, a silent chorus inviting you to listen deeper. Before you leave, Amina offers a final thought. The unfinished is never truly done. It waits for those who can hear. You nod, knowing your journey is far from over. Returning to Egypt, you feel the weight of countless centuries pressing on your shoulders. The unfinished pyramid calls you back, but this time, you're armed with a deeper understanding and a growing unease. The spiral isn't just a symbol, it's a portal of sorts, a bridge between the known and the unfathomable. Your guide this time is an architect named Pharaoh, whose family has worked near the pyramids for generations. He's skeptical of all the mystical talk, but has seen things that defy explanation. Together, you explore hidden corridors less traveled, ones covered in layers of dust and sealed with time. Faisal tells you about the whispering walls, sections of the pyramid where voices seem to bounce and twist, where sound behaves strangely. You decide to test it. You whisper a simple phrase, something ordinary. Is anyone there? Your voice echoes back, but warped. Slower, deeper, almost like a voice speaking back in a forgotten tongue. A chill runs down your spine. Faisal shrugs, but his eyes are wide. Some say the pyramid is a giant musical instrument. The stones are tuned to catch sounds, memories, even spirits. You laugh softly, a haunted xylophone, great. But beneath your humor lies a serious thought. What if the pyramid wasn't meant as a tomb, but as a vessel? A resonator for something alive beneath the stone. Faisal shows you architectural plans from the Old Kingdom. Diagrams that hint at hidden chambers filled with peculiar materials. Bitumen, resin, metals not usually found in Egyptian tombs. Historians still argue whether these materials were for ritual or practical purposes. You lean closer to the plans, tracing the spirals mapped out with exacting care. Faisal tells you a story passed down by his grandfather, that the architects sacrificed their voices, and sometimes their very selves, to complete the pyramid's protective song. The spiral, Faisal says quietly, is the seal and the key. You realize the unfinished pyramid is less a failure, and more a warning. A message encoded in stone and silence. As the sun sets behind the desert, you feel the pyramid's hum grow stronger. And you know one thing for certain. The mystery isn't over. It's only just begun. With the sun sinking low over the Nile, you find yourself drawn to the Valley of the Kings. a place synonymous with mystery, death, and endless exploration. But you're not here for the pharaohs themselves. You're here to investigate whispers of a hidden chamber beneath Tutankhamun's tomb, said to be sealed off since antiquity. Local guides exchange wary glances when you mention it. Many have searched, one says. But some doors are closed for a reason. You descend into the dusty corridors, the air thick with incense and forgotten secrets. The walls are covered with vibrant paintings depicting the journey of the soul. But your eyes are drawn to subtle spirals etched into the plaster, nearly invisible, as if purposely concealed. One legend says that the boy king's tomb was built atop an older, secret chamber. A chamber housing the unfinished pyramid's final secret. As you carefully explore, you discover a hidden niche behind a false wall. It's small and cramped, but inside lies a small, stone box, etched with the familiar spiral and strange symbols that seem neither Egyptian nor human. You can almost hear the faint hum again, that subtle vibration you've felt throughout your journey. Inside the box is a small artifact, a carved piece of ivory shaped like an ear. It seems symbolic. You recall that Duval's notes mentioned the inner ear, the spiral of listening beneath the step pyramid. And suddenly everything feels connected. Historians still debate the meaning of these symbols. Some believe they represent the divine connection between the mortal world and the afterlife. Others suggest they were warnings meant to protect sacred knowledge. You ponder the open question. What if these spirals are not just art, but part of an ancient technology? Technology designed to listen. You sit silently in the dim light, letting the weight of centuries settle over you. The spiral whispers to you, urging you to listen deeper, to remember what has been forgotten. And with that, you feel the pyramid's secret stir, ready to share its story with those patient enough to hear. The last rays of sunlight slip away, and you find yourself back where the journey began, standing before Sekhemkhet's unfinished pyramid under a blanket of stars so vast it feels infinite. The desert is quiet now, save for the soft whisper of the wind, weaving through the stones, carrying echoes from long ago. You close your eyes and let the night envelop you. The spiral hums softly in your mind, a lullaby both ancient and new, a melody carved in stone and memory. You think of the vanished architects, their voices captured and silenced within these walls, yet still singing beneath the sand. You imagine the countless hands that labored here, not just to build a tomb, but to bind something powerful and unknowable. A secret too dangerous to be spoken aloud, too vast to be contained by mere words. Historians may continue to debate what really happened, whether the architects disappeared by choice or fate, or if the pyramid was meant to remain unfinished as a guardian of silence. But as you stand here now, you sense that some mysteries are not puzzles to be solved, but stories to be felt whispered gently in the dark. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool desert air fill your lungs, and whisper back to the wind, "I remember." The spiral's song fades slowly, becoming a soft hum, then a breath, then silence. And in that silence, you find peace. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Sweet dreams.